Thank you, Acting Speaker. It's always wonderful to be the last speaker on a bill last thing in the evening, but I am second last. I'm more than happy to contribute on this bill because it is an important one and it's about 3 years too late. And as a mother, Acting Speaker, as a working mother, I used childcare for years with my two boys. Fortunately for me, I had a spot at the Murray Valley Aboriginal Co-op Early Childhood Learning Centre and then the preschool after that, thank goodness. But Robinvale, where I live, has been in the news regarding the very broken system around childcare over the past 2 to 3 years. We've had illegal childcare homes or family establishments in the news. We've had a fatality because of that. So I know this only too well. And as a mother, you know how much trust that you place in those early childhood educators and centres and services. When you drop your child off, whether it's to daycare, whether it's to kinder, preschool, whether it's to school, and you're often doing that, you're often rushing between work and school runs and everything else that you have to manage as a parent. You're not just handing them to a carer or an educator, you have to have full trust in that person and you have to have full trust in that centre. So ultimately, you have to have full trust in the system that regulates that person, that system, with the most precious thing to you in the world, and that is your children. Because if that trust is not there, then that system does not work. Parents and families will find it hard to work, and that system has been illustrated to be flawed and broken. The Ombudsman recommended changes 3 years ago. This is 3 years late. And because of that, children have unnecessarily been put in danger, the most precious things in the world to parents have been placed in danger, have been violated, and in my town of Robinvale's case, have died. That is not okay. That is simply not okay. So when I hear members on the other side stand up and talk about how much work and how much investment has gone in, children have died in a broken system that was identified 3 years ago. That is unforgivable. Unforgivable. And look, I could spend, and I was going to cut this short, and I say that all the time, and I probably won't, because there's a few other things I wanted to get to. I won't spend all of my time just on the most important aspect that any government of the day has. Their biggest remit is to protect the community, protect our kids, make sure the systems are fail-safe. This government has failed at that, and children have died because of it. The early childhood, can I just for a moment just pause and talk about the dysfunction that we're debating all of these bills on? Even the member for Shepparton, who is usually the utmost professional, just does her job. You never hear her say a bad word about anybody, but even she was frustrated today at the fact of having to debate 4 bills concurrently and not spend enough time on each one of them that we could have easily, I'm sure everybody in this place, could have easily dedicated 10 minutes each to each of these bills. So the manner in which this is done, as I said in the government business program debate earlier today, Acting Speaker, it just contradicts and makes a mockery of the Westminster system of Parliament and the conventions that we uphold in this place. It shows that this chamber is out of control, but we know that. I did want to spend a little bit of time on the Social Services Regulation Amendment, Child Safety Complaints and Worker Regulation. It's a big one, but as I was flicking through this earlier today, I did notice that this is the bill that deals with the Disability Service Safeguards Act 2018, and also the disability, if I can find it, and I did have this written down. The member for Gippsland East earlier spoke about this, and when I picked this up, that this seems to be because the changes to the sector, the disability sector, have been on the cards for quite some time, and now to be shoved into this Social Services Regulation Amendment Bill to now abolish the Commission, the Commissioner, and put it into a super social services regulator, which is exactly what the sector did not want. And the Premier can get up in Queen's Hall and say nothing about us without us, which is that's what the sector wanted. That's what the disability sector wanted. They wanted a say. And guess how many stakeholders were consulted with this part of the reform, Acting Speaker? 0. There was 20 that the Shadow Minister has spoken with and speaks with often. 0 have been consulted. So we end up with a super social services regulator, with this one being just shoved in there like it doesn't matter. It does matter. It matters a lot. And I just think the way that this has all been gone about is, again, an illustration of the lack of transparency, the hypocrisy and the utter delusion that we continually see from this government. Is it any wonder Victorians are frustrated right now? And if you actually get out and talk to Victorians, you'll hear that they are incredibly frustrated. They feel like they're being gaslit. They feel like they're not being listened to, and they're right. There's a reason they feel like that. So to have another example of that today is, again, incredibly frustrating. And those 20 stakeholders that were not consulted are incredibly frustrated, and they will no doubt be writing letters to the Shadow Minister, the member for Gippsland East, because he has consulted with them and does on a regular occasion. Now, for parents in regional Victoria, as far as early childhood goes and early childhood learning goes, affordability remains the biggest barriers, which is why you have, and black markets and illegal operators only pop up through necessity and when there's a market there or a gap to be filled, which is why we've had illegal operators in the past. So affordability and access is a huge issue still, even though we have had several new early learning and childhood centres, one of which is yet to be built, which is, I might add, across the road from a backpackers, which is actually a code for an establishment which houses itinerant workers, which have just applied for another 90 beds added to this establishment. It's just the most inappropriate place to put an early childhood centre in Redcliffs. It's ridiculous. And is there any wonder that the community there is screaming for someone to listen to them? But council have approved it, which is bizarre to me. Sometimes the lack of logic and common sense is just baffling to me. But we do need, and when the government announces more early childhood centres, childcare places, access, particularly in the regions, and our region has been noted plenty of times before, the Mitchell report identified it as a childcare desert, which it is. Towns like Hopetoun, there's still no childcare there for parents within an hour and a half. It's insane. Private providers are pulling out because it's just not feasible. So Whilst many families in Mildura, Robinvale, Hopetoun are struggling to find places in early childhood, this is 3 years too late.